pretty fun.
Come on, Forrest.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Morning, Forrest. Part two.
So are we having a redo because we were rabbiting on about fucking weight cutting and everything last time and never really got our pants off?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely more of an expert in other things. Not that I don't feel I could run a weight cut, but what I do is I usually just parrot stuff that our team has said. So if you have questions on what I say, I'm fucked. I don't know what you're like. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Well, you sounded like an expert relative to me because I still don't have that. I still don't have the weight cut dialed in. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, it's not that hard, you know.
But there was stuff you wanted to share, some specific stuff today, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking around. I mean, I'll share. So, can I share my screen? Let's see. How would I do that? View. Oh, share. I'll hit the button that says share. All right, that's it. Easy enough. Let's see. We got a ton of these.
This is pretty exciting.
Yeah. I'll leave all this in.
Yeah, so I've you know, throughout the years, I've kind of tried to refine our system. And when I say me, you know, this is a group thing. I'm you know, definitely got to kind of contribute and oversee it, but this is the work, you know, of a lot of, you know, smart people. And then that's the one. Yeah. All right, so this just, let's see. So this is just kind of where we draw the line between what we do at the UFC PI and what we don't do in regards to technical coaching of UFC athletes. It's a good place to start because if you think about it, if you guys are both fighting, you both come into the PI, we can write you the perfect dietetics program, the perfect S&C. We can manage your recovery. I can help you dial in your schedule based on your strengths and weaknesses and what skills you want for the fight. But you tell me what you're trying to do, right? Like I'm not going to tell you, hey, well, you're fighting this guy, or hey, in your last fight, you missed X, Y, and Z. You know, I just say, hey, well, what is it that you want to do? What are you trying to maintain? What are you trying to improve? And then, you know, we would work on a schedule from there. This sounds like the funniest thing in the world, but there used to be a Richard Simmons diet thing. Everybody's mom bought it. Richard Simmons, remember him, the crazy guy that did the calisthenics and stuff?
Dude, it's funny you say him because I was talking to Scotty about a coaching course that I teach tomorrow. Richard Simmons is in there because the dude looked weird and he moved weird and everything was weird, but it didn't matter because he knew how to present and be confident and be exciting.
You know what? And the other thing too, what I fall back on in my job constantly is I only need to know 10 or 15% more than you. As long as I know, I don't have to know, I don't have to be even a master in this field. It's like nutrition. I'm not a master in that field, but I know maybe 10% more than you guys, right? Just from having done this. So, you know, it makes you kind of comfortable. But he had a thing that
But can you blow this up, Forrest? Can you just make this up like the presentation mode or the slideshow mode so that people can see this, if you don't mind? You might have to just do a slideshow. Sorry, I didn't mean to fuck it all up.
Could I ask before you go through there, what is it? I'm curious how you define what is the technical team or the technical staff?
Technical staff.
What is the technical part in
that? Yeah, it's a great question, and that's something that again, it's not my term. The technical would be MMA. So MMA is the actual sport. Everything else is non-technical or the supplementary services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just curious how it was.
Yeah, so technical I refer to like myself as the technical lead here. That should be a little better. Are you guys on phones?
No, I just want people to be able to see it.
So this is, yeah, I mean, that's not super important. There we go.
There you go.
This is kind of the framework that we fall into as far as, you know, kind of where, and I've gotten to draw the lines with some of our bosses on what we do and don't do. Again, you know, just trying to give the best to the fighter. Here's what we're trying to do. You know, identify the best talent from the region. So we have to have a relationship with every good gym in that region, with every, really, it starts with the local fight promotions. And then you go, all right, who are the fighters? What gyms are they coming from? And then we just put all this on a spreadsheet. And then every year when we have our combine, I just email who you got. And then, managers, I'm at a point where now managers come to me. I don't have to like send it out, or they go to Eric Del Fiero, or a guy named Peter Zhang in China who's been, doing it over there for years.
Hey, wait, pause, just pause. Don't change anything. So you said combine because Scotty is working on his master's in skill acquisition. And one of the things he has to do for the end of the semester is figure out a way to, Scotty, tell him not the framework, but the other part, the evaluation part.
Yeah. So part of one of the modules on frameworks this year is coming up with our own framework, which I think is easy enough, but there's an assessment tool that has to be built into it. And I'm just as fucking lost as I was last week and the week before and the week before that. How you assess skill ethically in MMA from a relational ecological perspective is a real challenge. I'm not sure how robust any kind of findings or data we can get, and I'm not sure what to do with the data.
And so there's a guy named Dean Amundsinger that did a lot of this. And basically we take all the 55ers and we have them compete. And then you rank them in order of value. And if X beats Y, move to X. And then you just kind of move on like that. So, control the live goes, right? So we do a lot of jiu-jitsu. We do all the basic, like the 4 or 5 most basic positions found in UFC fights. We know this through data. And this is what I get to do is like, all right, where are fights happening on the ground in the UFC and for how long? And then you get up from there, get up, sweep, submit. Man on the bottom gets up, sweep, submits, you win. You get points. Guy on the top maintains control, 30 seconds, passes, submits, he wins. And then you just, you can rank points based on like how extraordinary the action was. Submission would be higher than an escape. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's almost like a little
thing in wrestling. But the wrestling is, there's a risk of injury. So we take out no back trips, no outside trips, no uncontrolled weight. We don't start, a common position is where I would have your back on the fence. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We actually don't do that position, even though it's very common to the UFC because of the risk of injury. So, but basically we just
wait. What do you mean, Forrest? What position don't you do?
So where I have a tight waist on you from the back and we're against the fence.
Oh, okay.
That's a very common position in MMA, in the open, in the fence, but it's also high probability of injury, so it's not worth it.
Because people sit on each other's knees?
Yes, all the time. But there's no uncontrolled body weight, so you shouldn't be able to jump.
Right.
And even if I pick you up, I can't leave my feet to slam you.
Right.
I can't do the jumping slam. But yeah, so you just set up the most common positions in the sport and have people go live from there. You can attribute offense, defense, or you can just say go.
How do you handle the striking phase?
So just basically a fancy, a guy named Mark Timms came up with it. It is a fancy Dutch drill. And then we'll pull them aside and we'll have them hit mitts for 3 minutes. The first minute being the basics. The second minute, kind of see if you can work with the flow with the guy. And the third minute, we're going to assess what do you like to do, whatever, like the athlete's kind of prowess there. So we, here are your fundamental skills. And then what's your range of skills? So what type of strikes or how big is your arsenal? And then
how does that correlate? How do you see that correlating? How do you see what they can do on the pad work correlating to what they can do in real live sparring?
Right. So, yeah. But everybody else in the world, but you guys does a lot of pad work and back work. So it's pretty common. And you can see, has a guy done this? How's his power? Can he find his range? And I don't have them with me. I should actually have brought those up, but we have some markers. Just again, we're taking the subjective and objectifying it. So I've given the team, we came up with 6 markers, power, speed, your ability to react, your creativity, your, I want to see how the breadth of your MMA arsenal, that's going to give me some idea as to how long you've been in the sport. And then this is, again, the China team figured this one out. We do an intake survey. What's the highest level? Like how many years have you been training this at what level? So we have an understanding of who you are coming in. And we've watched your last 3 or 4 fights. So we know when the rubber meets the road, where you are, what you're about. Because it was the fight tape that got you in. The fight tape, the age. This is why we went out and I said, hey, well, we're going to give you a sweet contract and we'll give you money to basically fight for the UFC. And, again, why wouldn't you come to an academy program? My goal is to fast track you into road to UFC, contender, or directly into the UFC. So if that's what you want to do as a professional martial artist, the academy program is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, that's great. Scotty, this is what I was hoping you get to hear a little bit of.
So just, you've got grappling so we've taken MMA just like everybody else, grappling on the ground, grappling on the feet. and then striking, and we've divided them for safety. Because I find, and I'm sure you guys do too, it's those transitions, the uncontrolled bit where people get hurt. But even a spar, if we both got like 12-ounce gloves on and some padding, what we'll do is I get X, Y, and Z to attack you, and then you defend. And then we're going to rank that. How many times you get hit? What did it look like? You know? So it's not sparring, but it's a live Dutch drill. And I know that kind of violates everything you could think, because it's live, but it's you know what it is? It's heavily constrained, so we don't have a fight.
Sure.
But we're still fighting. You know, I'm still trying to, for 1 minute, hit you in the fucking face with a jab, with straight punches, any straight punches, you know? And you're just defending. And then we'll go, break, and then you'll go, not for a minute. It's just like, you get to go, I get to go, you get to go, I get to go. Sure. And we switch the technique. You get to go, I get to go, you get to go. And then I just want to see, like, if somebody's low kicking you, what's your defense system for it? Is it a check? Is it a this? Is it that? And then we get down to where it's like I'm throwing combos with a kick, but you're only allowed, you're not allowed to like catch and dump me, right? Because now we're getting to where now I'm going to try to take your head off, or like, well, I wasn't trying to hit him that hard. That's what we got shin guards on. That's why he was able to catch me and dump me, and you know. So sure. You know, we just limit that. Like, you can't catch kicks. You can kind of catch them and throw them off, you know. But I want to see, you know, how do you deal with low kicks? How do you deal with high kicks? How do you deal with body kicks? What's your defense system for that? How do you deal with straight punches? How do you deal with hooks? How do you deal with punches at different ranges? You know, it's really, I mean, it's just a basic Dutch drill, not unlike what we did with Scott, but now we're putting some parameters on it and trying to score it.
I'm not gonna speak ill of the dead. We did a lot of offense defense drilling, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean,
we still do.
And I say, look, man, put your feints in there. Like, don't be like, you know, throw a punch. Throw what you throw in a fight at fight speed. He knows you're going to throw it. If he can't defend it, it's kind of on him.
Right.
That's what we do, you know. But I don't want the where I like feint it, grab your hand, and then punch you, you know. So you have to like,
gotcha.
You can't, you know, we're not like throwing the hook to pull the guard down and then the second hook, you know. It's a great technique, but it's not fit for this purpose.
Is there also a physical component to the combine where you get an idea of what their attributes are?
Oh yeah. So they do. I think it's in the journal.
It is in the journal.
It's in the journal. I mean, I know that there's 12 tests. Isometric mid-thigh pull, the weighted jump, where according to your body weight, they have the jumps to get your, you know, reactive strength index, right? And then they want to get your, you know, rate of force development off the isometric mid-thigh pull. And then they do the 1 minute test and the 6 second test. They don't do a VO2 max, but they do the 1 minute, they do the alactic 6 second test. It might be a truncated version. They might just do 2 instead of 3 goes. So it's like 6 seconds, 2 minutes rest, 6 seconds, 2 minutes rest, 6 seconds. And then they just do the 1 minute, you know, max, like all out go, the, you know, glycolytic burn. It feels like when we used to run 400s. Right. And that was the goal, so to get the burn, run a 400, walk 400, run a 400, walk 400. I remember like you making me and Duffy do that workout. And
yeah, I thought that was a good indicator of where we were, for sure.
It was a good indicator of how things can suck, especially when you got somebody like Duffy who's fucking fast. So now your 400, you're going to want to do it pretty well, you know? You're not going to kind of pace yourself.
Yeah, I think eventually we set some times for those too, I think, in later years, and they were pretty good.
Yeah.
Was that Todd Duffy you talking about
out here?
Say what, Forrest?
I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. Was that Todd Duffy you were talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big boy, huh?
I coached him in his early professional career.
So yeah, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a great aside, though. Hopefully,
no. Just on the combine. You know, again, there's so much in this program, and you know, having looked through the journal, you know that there's so much to it that like nutrition, intake process. How do I identify what makes a good martial artist? What makes, you know, what's going to make you good at the sport? Oh, quick aside. I still call it MMA, but I would argue that what we do is actually sport fighting, not mixed martial arts. I would argue that mixed martial arts is a separate beast. It's actually, you know, derived from the whole military martial thing. And then it, you know, became, in America anyway, a fat guy in a karate gi doing fancy stuff that may or may not ever work in a fight. And then, you know, what we do is actually based off the rules of the sport, and it's very ecological, right? Like what we do is these are the rules of the sport. What's the way to inflict maximal damage to this person within this rule set? So, i.e., sport fighting. So I think that's what we really do. If you think that's what I do anyway.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right?
No, it's Scotty and I like the word fundamentals is this like giant quagmire you get into talking to someone. And there's always like, they add so many things that it has no definition. So I think the simplest definition of fundamentals is the rules of your sport. That's what guides all behavior.
Yeah.
And then you work backwards from there.
Yeah, I have a slide that says that. You know,
all right,
basically.
Let's go.
All right, here. Forgive. This is my PowerPoint ability. I don't know why there's a sheep there. This is how we should adapt our training, right?
Okay.
Don't be a sheep fucker one. That's key. But no, it's the rules, the scoring criteria, and the most common win methods, plus UFC fight data, plus the athlete's abilities. And that is how we develop a training strategy for that individual. And then that training strategy from we want to do like a head outside single, blah, blah, blah. And from there, we're going to design his curriculum. So on Wednesdays, it's a wrestling day, high, head outside, working the skills he wants to, you know what I'm saying? Back to the, who was the guy we were talking about? The crazy weight loss coach guy. We're just with the crazy hair. What was his name? Simmons. All right. So he had a calendar. It was basically all your meals. So it was 7 days, three blocks. So what I do is I bring out a calendar, seven days, Sunday usually off, right? And then you have 3 blocks on each day. And then I put, all right, you're going to get a total of 12 practices. You got 3 wrestling cards over here. You put your wrestling cards in. You got 3 striking cards. You put your striking cards in. Grappling, you put your grappling in. S&C, you put your S&C in. So basically, you have to value order your training. I want to get better at wrestling. So I'm going to use 4 wrestling cards. I'm trying to, in this phase of camp, maintain my striking. I'm only going to use 2 striking cards. You know what I'm saying? And then S&C, well, I'm going to use the 3 for now out of camp while I'm trying to develop some physical attributes and develop what you would call, cardiovascular base for the sport or an energy system base. Make sense? So we'll do that 4-week block. You come back, new 4-week block. And then and then each week would have an intensity rating. It's high volume, high intensity, maybe medium volume, medium intensity, slightly higher, peak, deload. Make sense?
Yeah.
So and then it's hard, do any analytics on the fighters, like heart rate, RPE, stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. So in the academy and if they're in the building, yeah. We do the SSRI, the rate of perceived exertion. Sessional rate of perceived exertion is a tough one because if we have an hour-long practice, and this is driven by research, I think from Foster himself, who invented the scale, blah blah blah. Well, Borg invented the scale 6 through 20, but then it was Foster that came up with a sessional rate of perceived exertion. So if you do an hour-long practice, drill, but you go really fucking hard the last 20 minutes. You're going to give me a very high rate of exertion for an hour, right? Which is going to give us a metric. But, you're because what we did last, you have a little bias and you say that was a really hard workout, even though it actually wasn't that intense. You had live sessions versus drilling sessions. So what we're trying to do now is separate out the drilling from the live. And then you would rate your intensity. You would understand that you did 15 minutes of live, 3 rounds, like full on goes, and then you would rate that with the perceived intensity, and this first 40 minutes would have a separate perceived rate of intensity. So yeah, so what I'm saying is, yes, we do that. We wear heart rate monitors when possible, and they'll even tape them on. There's a shirt that Garmin makes. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a shirt with the heart rate monitors in it. We've used it. I thought it was good enough. Our sports science team did not think it was good enough. But even if you're not wearing it in practice, if we can get you a basic concept of sleep score, readiness score, and your HRV, like once you have 30 days of HRV data to look back on, you can start using that heart rate variability to gauge where you are as far as your training window for the next sessions or for the week. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I think that's the easiest way to do it because you're only asking me to wear a ring when I go to sleep. Which ironically, I forgot mine on the charger this morning.
Oura rings, is that what you use?
We use Ultra Human right now, but they're still a little better. No subscription fee.
Ultra Human. Okay.
I mean, the technology is relatively similar. I didn't really realize I left that horrible slide on there. So this is something, and this is completely made up, but it's kind of what I work off of. That and what is on my board over here, which I'll show you. So these would be A lot of it is what our team of sports scientists and other coaches have identified as the parts of a training. I don't do a fight camp and a late fight camp. So they do a late fight camp, which is 3 weeks because we do 3-week cycles. So early fight camp would be the first 3 weeks, late fight camp would be the second 3 weeks. I feel like a late fight camp for me is more about strength and conditioning. It's more about when we start going to short, sharp, pop, pop, pop. We've developed our base, we've developed our strength. Now we're just working on speed and power. We're maintaining power and trying to work on speed. Does that make sense? I mean, that's like CSCS basics, right? That's the whatever organization that does that would tell you that that's kind of the way to do it. But I don't in MMA training, I don't differentiate the first 3 weeks from the last 3 weeks. I differentiate the first 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how much conditioning you're in, versus the last 4 or 2 weeks, right? So what I mean by that is basically, when do we stop hard sparring? When do we start deloading to taper for competition, right? When does that point start? My belief, and I can be corrected on this now that I'm thinking about it. I've never seen scientific research, but my belief is the longer training you've done, the longer taper you get. Does that make sense? There's no empirical data to suggest that. That's just what I found. If you train hard for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, well, you should probably take a 10 to 14 day taper. If you only did it like a 6-week camp, you get a week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you would take age and weight cut into account as well with that, right?
Well, the taper is basically sorry, in my head, that's included in the taper, not age.
Okay.
I don't know. Age you'll have to tell me about, but the taper is, why are we tapering? And I'll use an example for myself. We're tapering because our caloric, we're having less calories. So if we have less calories and we're losing body fat, we're losing like lean mass too, we can't maintain that volume of work. We should maintain the intensity, but we can't maintain that volume, i.e. we have to taper down. So that's based on that. And that's personally, so I had a camp where I was freaking awesome. Everything was going great. And then the last 2 weeks, I was getting out wrestled by Jay Huron, a 170 pounder. The first, 6 weeks of camp, I was just physically manhandle him. And my strength was enough to overcome his technique. But, as my strength and energy went down, because I was only taking in like 2,600 calories a day, which for me was not a lot, I started getting out muscled by 70 pounders, which is like the worst thing to do going into a fight. You're like, I'm getting muscled by 70 pounders. This sucks. I suck.
Do you remember you had a fight camp? It was one of your early UFC fights. And the Saturday before, you brought in, John was there and some other people were there. And some other people. I don't think he was there, but it doesn't matter who. There were people there. And we went through a full workout that Saturday. And you, at the end of that workout, I don't think I said it to you, but I said it to Rory. I'm like, this is bad because he just peaked today.
Yes.
And the fight is next week.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. But then, yeah. And I probably did that in my career. I remember another time I was trying to get some easy sparring, like the week of the fight. It was literally like Sunday. I was leaving Tuesday. And I head kicked Yahoshu. I knocked him out. And I told him, yeah, we can go easy. It's fucking.
Yeah, but that's fine.
But it was like a pure accident. Like literally, I was just fucking on. I threw around with Big John, get the better of him. I was doing like 2 guys, and I was like, fucking great. But yeah, from then though, it's the weight cut. Of course, I felt good. I was doing great because I was 223 pounds. I was 224 pounds or something. Get down to 205. Start getting, for me anyway, getting under 225 at that time. I started feeling like a little, ooh, okay, I'm light.
What does RTT stand for?
Return to training.
Oh, okay.
So return to training, general prep, specific prep. Fight camp, taper cut, peak fight. I ran out of space to put peaking, but and peaking would be where you're doing like the alactic mitt work, as a guy named Dean would call it. Just pop, stay sharp, but it's kind of the same thing I do in the locker room to warm up. I'll hit mitts really hard for 10, 15 seconds, maybe shoot a takedown, maybe do a get up, and then walk around for a minute. Let my heart rate come back down. Just that explosive burst, just relax. And then, it's actually a lot of the stuff, the Joel Jameson book you gave me 20 years ago, it's really adhering to that stuff. Whereas I remember like reading the book, that Joel Jameson's first book, and thinking like, rest for 3 minutes? That's stupid, because that's not what this sport is about. So in my head, I was like, well, I have to do some sort of intervals in, that equal to 5 minutes. I was really, the 5 minutes was in my head. And I was like, well, you would never rest you get a minute rest. So I shouldn't do more than a minute rest. He's telling me to rest for 3 or 4 minutes before I go,
Yeah, there's a difference, there's a difference between specificity of training,
yeah,
right, and representative of the training. And there's probably there's a role for each, obviously, but
Well, now what I realize is he was developing a maximal skill,
right,
developing a max peak thing, and that's
right.
what you have to do. Now that I understand energy systems, when I read that book, I didn't really understand any of that. I didn't even know aerobic, anaerobic. Like I didn't know this, I mean, I had basic biology. I could describe the parts of the cell, but I didn't know,
Right. Yeah.
I have a question about this periodization, right?
Yeah.
If we have to look at it from 2 different perspectives, one being that we acquire these skills, we build these, we memorize these motor patterns, or we program our bodies or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then you could also look at it from a different perspective that we're constantly adapting and updating, so our skills can develop and degrade, right?
Yeah.
So 2 things. The first question I was going to ask, when you talk about the sports science team, and I'm not trying to be cute here or whatever, are there motor learning scientists on the team?
Not directly, no.
Okay, so I was curious.
Nobody that's all right. So, to get a PhD, all the PhDs have touched that, and they have a good understanding of that. They've taken courses in it. All the PhDs we have, anyway. But that's not. Nobody's got their PhD in motor learning, skill acquisition. Nobody has that.
Okay, I'm not trying to be cute.
I'm sports psychology. And she has a pretty good knowledge of, the skill acquisition process as well.
I just think so there's 2 things that spring out as I think about this. So if you look at it from a traditional information processing model, that we're going to develop these patterns, these skills, these mental models, these representations coming up to the fight, then generally speaking, that can be done over a long time. We build that through our development arc. But what is really the point of a fight camp then? Just to hone in and refine some of these motor patterns and to get ourselves physically prepared?
It's a great question. It's not a 1-sentence answer. So this is the point of a fight. I'll start from the beginning. All right. So we're in a fight camp. These can be 3-week blocks. These can be 4-week blocks. I like return to training, 2-week block. And then we have just kind of, positions and skills. So return to training, I'm just identifying what it is the sport consists of. And that's very general, right? Intentionally broad and vague. In general prep, what are we doing? Well, we're doing a review of where we are to where we want to be. And this is actually from a non-MMA guy. where were we here? What do we need? What skills do we need to acquire to be better than we are, to be elite? What are the skills? And then, so we got to identify what skills we need to add in the general prep, and we'll start working them. And then we'll do that discrete skill training in isolation, right? I'll just start with wrestling. So this is the technique I want. This is the scramble I want. And then this is also kind of the Ilya Taporia model, right? So he does everything separately until about the last 4 weeks, and then he does MMA. He doesn't do MMA sparring outside of the last 4 weeks. And so for me, there's a place for that, but it's in the general prep, maybe the specific prep. Specific prep, we're just trying to refine down what skills we really need and what we are physically capable of acquiring, right? So I've identified the skills. Now I'm still trying to learn them. I'm trying to pick them up, and then we're kind of playing around with, well, what am I going to take into my next fight, regardless of my opponent, right? So the further out from a fight you are, the more you're working on your skills. The closer you get to a fight, that actually says that here. I could just read off the thing.
And can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
because
please.
what does that word skills mean to you? Because I think we're using it in a different context. The people that are listening to us on this podcast might have a different understanding of that word.
What was the definition I sent you? I was happy with that.
No, you mean the definition I sent you, or you sent me?
Both. I thought they were similar. I mean, I'm gonna find it.
All right, I'm gonna find it.
I'll go with either one of those.
So the definition I sent you was skill is the ability to adapt your movement solution to problems the environment presents.
Yeah.
And I think that you were using it as techniques that solve problems. And so there isn't a lot of daylight, but it may be a really important distinction. Are you looking on your phone?
Yeah, I'm looking for, I really liked.
Okay, you wrote a coordinated action that can be repeated in a fight under pressure. I almost used the word technique, which it could be, but could be something else.
That's what it is.
Your answer. That's a lawyer answer.
Which is what it is, though, right? I hang out with PhDs all day. That's how they talk. What's the answer? The answer could be many things, but that is how I am defining skill when I talk about it. Right? It's just a skill. It's an ability you have that you can use in a fight. And ability is not even the right word, because ability can be physical ability, but in this case, I mean, a technical ability. Something that, again, in my arsenal, that can be utilized under duress.
It's funny that you said physical and then you removed it, but I would say don't remove it, because without the physical, there is nothing. Like there's no separating the physical from the technique or the skill. I mean, it's all one thing. The more physically able you are, the more you're able to do things. Right? I mean, that's why you were ahead of your time, because you were a really good athlete.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. So that's kind of where we're at with the skill or technique, right? So that makes sense, I think, to both of us. It's pretty close. Sure. I mean, it's not the same, but it's pretty close, which is, I think, probably for the best. And now we're gonna start, like, as we get closer on this continuum to the fight, we're gonna start, who are we fighting? What are they good at? What are the situations which I perceive I have an advantage over them? Where do I want this fight to take place? What do I think is the distance or range? I don't want to kickbox at distance with Adesanya. Maybe I want to put him on the fence and grind him and fight him there. Maybe I want to fight him in boxing range, but it's like just general, right? I mean, which is, you look at the last fight, kickbox, he stayed at kickboxing range. The first round did really, really well. Second round, he went into the boxing range, and he went into the 50-50 position, right? When I say 50-50, it's like I can land, you can land, I can land, you can land. So then power becomes more important, and the actual skill and distance management become less important.
Why do you think he did that?
No idea.
Okay, hypothesize. Why would a fighter win the first round with an obvious game plan that he had that was working, and then be like, you know what, I'm going to do something different?
I don't know. Maybe what's his name? Starts with a P. Maybe Pfeiffer did something different. I think maybe, like, Adesanya still got a good chin. I think he took some of the shots in the first round and said, I don't really need to be afraid of that, or maybe he was looking to be exciting and finish the fight, instead of usually just touch until something rocks the guy and then you go in for the kill. But
this is all screaming adaptation to me. I know I saw in the original slide the Dreyfus model. I'm not totally familiar with that. I believe it's a very linear information process model. But you mentioned Topuria, right? He puts it all together the last week. He's adapting to game speed. So it's interesting. I looking at this periodization thing, I think it goes through a lot of these linear assumptions. With regards to game plans, I think Adam likes to say that 50% of game plans fail. 50%.
Well, no, I like to say, because someone loses every fight. I also like the old, everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Yeah.
But also, the flip side.
That wasn't even Tyson's originally. There was somebody else that said a very similar quote. And then
I think it was a general. It was like not Eisenhower, Patton. No. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple, but the one you're talking about is a battle plan rarely survives the first shot.
First contact.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, something like that. But and I think the flip side is, right, the other person has a say in it. And I like the fact that you pointed out that maybe what Adesanya did was driven by what Pfeiffer did. That he because it's not Adesanya's fight, it's their fight. And so sometimes the ideas of these game plans, I get it. But if we get too granular, then sometimes we forget that the other person has a say in it.
And that what you've seen in the past is not always what shows up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like people change, people develop, people go to new gyms and start fighting a different way. Now I've seen this a bit too, where you're like, that is a different guy. He went to a different gym for 7 weeks and he's different. Wow, he's fighting different than he has before. I didn't even know he had that. But here's the thing. When you're working the game plan, the techniques, everything like that, you're not losing. You're still getting better at a skill or adapting to something. So that's going to come up and improve you for later on.
Right.
I mean, the other thing is, when I say game plan, I also mean, like, we want to identify the opponent. What are his tells? What are his weaknesses? What are the feints he likes? And I want to say, okay, you know what? He does that rear leg feint, but he really actually throws that kick. I know that. Or like me, when I'm in trouble, in a fight, what do? I fucking put my head down and go forward. Like you could watch 4 fights of Forrest Griffin and know they're like when he gets clipped, he puts his head kind of down, look over the top of his eyes, and does the the running man punches, right? Like that's going to be his oh shit, or like this guy's going to shoot, or if you push him, BJ Penn identified it with Shirk. Once he gets to the back line, once he gets on the cage, he's uncomfortable. He's going to want to shoot. I'm going to fucking knee him every time he tries to shoot, And then that was something he identified specific for Sean Shirk, which if you look at Sean Shirk's career, that's something he always does.
Rob Gray, who is a professor in this area, is doing a series of short lectures on this type of idea. Like, what do you do with offline information? Does it, are you using it? I'm sorry, what did you say, Forrest?
What is offline information?
These things that you identify that the other person does. When a pitcher has a 3-2 count, he usually throws a fastball.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and is that just is that a cognitive process, or is that just you're educating your attention, and so you can pick it up better? You can, if it happens or doesn't happen, things like that. And there's no great answers because
I've got what I think is a good answer.
No, I don't mean I want to hear that, but I meant in like where does it get stored? Is it representative? Does it come out in the middle of the fight? Like, there are no great answers to that. I know how we feel about that. Let me hear.
Yeah. So this is what makes, again, MMA very unique. You've got a guy in the corner that can also identify, that's also watched the film, that a guy, and I've heard an Eric Nixick do this, where he called the technique the guy was going to throw, and sure enough, he fucking threw that technique. Like I've
okay, but what's the right? But what's the value?
You've done your film study with your coaches, so your coaches now have the ability to give you information. Maybe it's in some sort of code, maybe not, but now I can give you information on what I see your opponent doing or what I think he might do without you having to, because you want to be kind of more about what am I going to do.
So I think what I would argue is you are perceiving and acting without anything in between those two things, and so
action coupling, right?
So whatever Eric Nixick perceives is way different than what you can perceive and act on.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the value of that is, other than it makes Eric Nixick look, like
he's watched some film.
Like he's watched some film.
Yeah.
And I get it in football or sports where you can make changes on every play. It makes sense. But and it's funny, before you said Eric Nixick's name, I was going to point out that there's a coach in the UFC recently that you really like. And I've seen this trend with his fighters, and they are unable to make any changes between the first round and the subsequent rounds. And I was going to say, I believe a lot of that is because they program that on the pads.
Yeah, no, I see that too. I would say that's probably if I wanted to throw like I think of a TJ Dillashaw and his coach, I forget, also
Bang.
Yeah, Ludwig. I think of those guys because they have those sets, and then it's like, if you do XYZ, then this is always the response. But I worked with the guy Peter Welch, and I really liked it. It's just simple as if I catch a cross, I just immediately, without thinking, cross, hook, cross, move off on the second. And dude, I've done that freaking 10, 15 times in 16 fights in the UFC. Or if I catch a hook, I just throw my own hook, cross, exit. And like, they didn't always land, but it came out and it was enough to give the guy something to think about. It was like, oh, the second I touch this comes out, and it's okay. There's intent there. It might even not land, but it's, I have to do something about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But again, I'm just giving you a case where it works, but yeah, I've seen guys, of course, where, it doesn't work either.
Right. And I think what you're pointing to is, the way that striking works is that if you defend, it sets your body up to do something naturally almost.
Yeah. It's just an instinctive. It just pops out. I love it. Sometimes it'll still pop out when I'm sparring. Bing, bing, bing. Like, oh shit, it's amazing.
And it's never quite the same. It's never quite the same. But it's never quite the same.
No, because you're always slightly different. Your feet are in the wrong position. You're there. But it's my attempt at that perfect technique. So it's like bag work. We don't really see. I think bag work done correctly has some value. I think most bag work is shit. But that's only because there's not an intent behind it. Like, what am I getting out of this bag work? Like, what am I trying to do? And then what's the and then taper. And sometimes on the taper, your opponent changes or some crazy shit might happen, and then you would kind of want to drill that. Then there's also where you're fighting like Damian Maya, a specialist, where that will change your plan to some extent too, because you know, like I have to fucking not get taken down. I have to change my stance a little bit. I have to like, you know, suck in my offense because I don't have the confidence to get up if he gets to my back. I could be done there, you know? So you're identifying the techniques you need, and then you're sparring in the fight camp and you're saying, did I successfully adapt this skill, you know? Right? And that's kind of my thought on it, you know? So I can do it in training. I should try to do it in the fight. I can do it under, you know, close to competition conditions. That's the best idea I have that I'd be able to do it in a competition. And then obviously you cut, hopefully the work's done. And then post-fight though, and I ran out of space, but post-fight, what, you know, you got to identify the fight. What were the skill gaps? You know, what didn't I do well? What do I want to improve? What did I do well? But more or less like, you know, how do I maintain what I did well? And how do I add some skills that would have been useful for that last fight? So like a post-fight reevaluation. Yeah.
What kind of value do you put on getting sparring partners that, well, I guess it's two, sparring partners that can mimic your opponent and or sparring partners that already look like your opponent?
Yeah.
I think those are, yeah. What do you think?
I think the more specialized your opponent, the more necessary it becomes. You're fighting a long southpaw, you need a long southpaw. Period.
Okay.
Just period, right? You're fighting a long southpaw kickboxer. You're fighting a guy with really good shots, you need some sort of wrestler. And then I would prefer that shot to come out of the stance that my opponent's shot is going to come from. So, again, look, you can only get what you can get. You only have access to who you have access to. And you hear this in the fight commentary a lot when they talk about, like, imagine trying to find people to train for this guy. Well, I mean, if you can't, you can't. Then you're just working on being the best version of you. But I think my caveat would be that the distance, the arm length, the leg length makes a difference in sparring because, you know, I fight so much better when I'm longer. If my opponent's longer, it's a whole different thing for me, you know? So, you know, that's just personally what I found. And because I found that personally, when I watch fights, I think I seek that out to kind of validate what I think is true. So that's my full thought on, I think it's definitely useful.
So it's unclear to me what the value of film study is, but I'll concede there's value there. From probably the perspective that Adam and I would have, though, I don't think you can meaningfully make much sense out of a fighter without thinking of how he's interacting with the other fighter. So I think with regards to film study, shouldn't we just be looking at what the fighter, and you know this, right? But what the fighter tends to do, rather a little bit more, maybe more valuable is what is eliciting that behavior? What is the relationships that you're seeing in that fight?
What I heard you say to me, in my own brain, I translated the closer your opponent is to fighting someone similar to you, the more valuable that's going to be. You know, if my opponent is fighting another long striker and I'm a short wrestler, he's not going to fight me the same way. I know that, but I can still see what his technical preferences are, what his go-tos are, what he does when he's fatigued, where he moves in the cage. You know, some guys will move back when they're fatigued. Some guys move forward. You know, I can still see what he does if I have enough recent film on him.
Yeah, so, I don't disagree with that. I just, if I'm watching film, which I do, I try and look at the interaction rather than the action. That's all. And you're probably
I mean, probably right? 100%. And yeah, like my takeaway from that would be the closer they are to, the closer the opponent, the closer the guy is fighting someone to you, the more useful it's gonna be, right? If they're fighting somebody totally different than you, you know, it's interesting, but is it, you know, or maybe it's like, you know, I'll go one the other way. Maybe it's Tito Ortiz. Tito Ortiz tries to do the same thing against everybody. There's only one way that sucker fights. He's got to try to punch, shoot, and set himself up for the shot. You know, and then ground and pound. He fights everybody the same way. Sometimes
ground and pound with elbows too.
Yeah, but you know, he sets his shots up and he sets his offense up the same way. You know, with everybody. You know, Kevin Randleman he did the exact same thing with everybody. It was just like, was he fast enough and athletic enough to do his thing to you? Like, could you get out of the way fast enough? Or could you get him to the second, third round and then just beat him up? You know? So
I guess I'm talking a little bit for Adam here as well. But so I think Adam and I would agree that we want as much novelty. And the novelty, all the different looks you're getting, the different sizes, the different speeds, the different skill sets, the different experience, the weights, all that shit. That's doing the heavy lift. That's doing the heavy lifting as it pertains to becoming an adaptable fighter. So what Adam and I think are advocating for. Sorry, Adam, I'm bringing you with me. I'm throwing you under the bus.
No, go ahead. I agree.
It begs the question: why are we teaching ideal. Why are we trying to teach to, not saying we all are, to a technical ideal at all? I don't want my fighters moving the same way. First of all, we need to come to a consensus of what a fucking perfect jab or a perfect cross or a perfect roundhouse is anyway. Yes, there's features that make some better than others, but as long as my fighters are gravitating towards that, I want as much diversity and ugliness and like novelty in the room as I can.
So what you just described is why it's so important to have out of camp sparring that doesn't hurt you, because I want as many looks as possible. I want to solve as many, to put it in your terms, I want to solve as many unique problems or novel problems as I can in that off camp, just because I don't know who my next opponent is, one, and two, it's going to broaden my skills. I'm going to find out, all right, what do I do against this guy? Okay, this guy's different. And I think that's great, you know? And maybe I would do that anytime except for maybe the last 4 weeks of sparring. Last 4 weeks of sparring, I want maybe the look. This is the look, you know? Yeah. And when I say last 4 weeks of sparring, I mean like 5 weeks out. But yeah, I mean, that's literally, you know, you go with a random person. You might spar with I sparred again for the first time in 4 months. I've decided my knee is so fucked, there's no point in trying to save it. And I did a round with a girl. I don't know that I've ever sparred with a girl before, but I did, and I got something out of it because I was like, well, I'm going to move and I'm going to let her get close, but try not to let her punch me. You know what I'm saying? So like, you're just working yourself, and that's like where the athlete, and I don't know that I had this in my 20s, the athlete has enough intelligence to take advantage of every problem they're given and think, all right, how do I solve this problem? Like, obviously, I don't want to hit this girl hard. I want her to punch at me, and I want to evade every punch, right?
I tell my team,
and I think, Scotty, I think a little bit of the disconnect, because I don't think there's a lot of daylight here.
No.
And because, Forrest is exposed to a lot of really good stuff and comes up with a basis in aliveness. Some of the discussion here that we're having past each other is there are amateurs, and then there are low-level pros and higher-level pros, and now UFC fighters and elite UFC fighters. And each one is at a different place in their skill levels and what is stabilized. And so, and what you can do after a fighter has 15, 20 fights and is elite, there may be a difference in what you can do with that fighter versus when a fighter's young and more malleable. And so we have to take that fighter where they are, meet them where they are. And Forrest is meeting them usually at an elite level.
They're developed. They've developed something already. They've already got what they want to do. They've got, it's slight changes. When you're just starting, you can do a whole course correction and go this way or that way. And you should. You probably should. But as you get here, that adaptability, because you've got so much rote dogma, it's going to be harder and harder to just change who you are as a fighter. Also, the thing I brought up last time, Scott, my favorite thing is the thing I do best when I coach is I show a technique and I say, look, I'm not great at this. This is what I do. This is a boxing technique that I've adapted for MMA. So I've changed my stance. I've changed it, blah, blah, blah. I want you to do it with your body, your speed, your timing, your space. So we're doing the same technique, but it's going to look different. So the jab becomes, it's just a lead hand, or like with really like you might do, it's a lead hand from, in a relatively straight fashion. You know what I'm saying? So your jab, the footwork on your jab might look a lot different. I teach the same footwork Doc taught, but a lot of guys move their front leg up only, and then they bring their back leg up on the cross. I move both up on the jab and then pivot on the cross. It's preference.
Do you do that in fights?
I have done that. I will. Who's the guy I fought? Went to jail for Travis Fulton.
Jab cross.
It was fucking beautiful. It looked like I was on the fucking mitts. Beep, beep. All 3 punches hit him clean. It was like my feet were in the right spot. I was like, I know this because there was a picture of it in the UJ paper, and it was like perfect. It was like a fucking, out of a textbook. It was like, that's how you should throw a jab cross. That's what it should look like, So yeah,
that's beautiful that situation, that interaction, that fight you're in, that afforded you the ability to express that. And
yes, because Travis Fulton was not as long as Forrest, and Travis Fulton was a traditional boxer for his striking.
Yeah. He was loading up a big rear hand the second I came in, but I was longer and quicker. So the big rear hand kind of fell down with him, He was trying to counter my jabs, because a double jab is not the hardest thing to counter. He was trying to counter my jabs with a cross or some sort of overhand, I think. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, overhand.
But that cross caught him and crumpled him before he could, express that skill.
I liked what you said last week. I like what you said last week about you want to train in the body you're going to fight in, because I think that's a really ecological idea that I think is missed.
And again, that's something I would tell you I know is trial and error. You know, I really liked when I'd get up to like 235. Remember those days?
I do.
That was great.
I was, yeah,
That was fucking
not for
great.
me. It wasn't great for me.
I know it wasn't great for anybody except me.
That's why my body hurts.
But that's not the body I could have on fight day. So
Right.
those attributes are irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah.
not that wasn't I couldn't replicate that on fight day. So in essence, it was like, you know, sense of false confidence. You know, like I was just fucking you're 250 pounds and I'm just pushing you off of me. But then, you know, you cut the calories, cut the weight by 10 pounds. I'm like, shit, bad technique doesn't work without extreme strength.
Can I ask you about this slide you put up?
Yeah.
All right. So this is sessions per week, 60, 90, 120. How, if you had a 60 or 90 or 120,
yeah. They don't have to. It could be 80. It could be anything.
Okay. How much live work? So there's some warm up, there's some cool down. How much live work do you think can a person do in a session before it starts to become either dangerous because of risk of injury or just it's not valuable anymore?
I gotta give you an Adam answer here. It's 100% dependent on that individual and that environment. If I look at high school wrestlers, look at high school wrestling. How much live work do they do? It's a fucking lot. In season, sometimes. They're still doing a lot of live work. You know, it's like they'll do some live work, stop, bullshit a little bit, do some live work. At least when Gray Maynard used to take me to, you know, wrestle with the high schoolers, I'd wrestle with the heavyweight high schoolers and beat them up. It was really pathetic. I was a 30-year-old man wrestling, beating up 17-year-olds, but it was great. It was great. We were the same weight. What do you want? But beat up guys that don't even have pubes yet. It's great. Yeah, that was so it's going to be varied. Shoot for about 20 minutes. I like drill, learn, re-warm up, do your live rounds. And then the other thing that I don't know what they're doing in Mexico exactly, but what they're doing in Shanghai is you might do like 3 minutes, 30 seconds rest, 3 minutes, 30 seconds, or you might do 2 minutes rest, and you know, like where it's like kind of a ladder practice where you're actually out more than you're in. But when you're in, you're going live. You know what I'm saying? Like those rotational.
Scotty used a lot of that. We used to do that.
Yeah. We would have like basically your rest is based on how my rest would be based on how long it takes you and Rory to either get the move we're going for or to break from that position. And then we would reset, and then I would come in with the winner or loser or, you know, top bottom out, like you do, you know, so you do drills like that. So even then, even though you're doing 20 minutes of live work, it's not 20 minutes of all live. It might be me and you for 2 minutes, rest 30 seconds, me and somebody else for 2 minutes, or you're top for 2 minutes, rest, I'm top for 2 minutes. You know, it could be like that too. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I got from you at the first UFC thing was we do some live work to warm up, then we do our hard sparring, and then we do some live work to cool down.
Yes, I love it. I just feel for me, I'm just primed to learn. And we're taking a big break. So we're taking like a full 5 minutes. And then we're doing, you know, specific, you know, like, okay, what did I want to work on today? What was I trying to do today? Like, and I just feel for me, and I've gotten positive feedback, you're primed to learn because you just made the mistake. Why not fix it right now, you know?
Right. I call it self-study. And so I'll say, okay, you have a 15-minute block right now. Pick something that happened during the sparring that you need, you know, live reps on, get a partner and go. And then that's usually the only time that myself or the other coaches will sort of interject.
Yeah.
I hate that we're going through this slide deck so fast. It's really cool stuff.
But a lot of it is not, I mean, I got so many slides. A lot of this, all right, so I have a ton of slides and each has a portion of skill acquisition, you know? Like I don't have a whole slide dedicated to skill acquisition. I just, you know, mention it in every slide, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like in every presentation, there's going to be some form of skill acquisition. I don't know. You might find this interesting.
Oh, okay. Attack.
Yeah. So.
Forrest is a cat person, which is why I can't go to Vegas and stay at his house. Scotty, what else? I know Forrest has probably a hard out at 12:30 or whatever that time is.
I'm going to ask Forrest a question that I'm just curious to answer that I ask a lot of my team and fighters. Okay, so you pick a sparring partner or a training partner. You're out there. You start the spar. They go to throw a strike at you. When does that strike begin?
When does that strike really go? I mean, I guess for me, I have a really good answer. It begins when I identify that it's coming.
Might be good answer.
Might be the shoulder, might be the hip, might be his lead step. It might not be until it's fucking already coming to me. But that's when that strike begins for me. And that's when I have to take my mind from what am I going to do to him to how am I going to counter this. Now, that's actually something I struggle to do still in fights. And then we could talk about flow and times I've had fights where I didn't struggle to do that. But I know what I'm trying to do. But then now you've done something. I've got to forget what I'm trying to do and adapt to this. Does that make sense?
So no, it makes a lot of sense. I think that was a good answer.
I'm trying to.
That was a great answer.
I'm trying to touch you with my leg, but now I see I have to deal with this cross coming at me. So that's when I once I identify it, now I've got to deal with it, and I've got to deal with that, and then I can go back to trying to kick you in the leg, or maybe that's gone because our positions have changed, and I've got to identify what I want you to hit you with now.
I think we're getting close to putting this in a nutshell. So Adam, explain your little replace the P with the A thing, and then I'll follow up.
No, I think the way Forrest has described it was excellent. I mean, the strike doesn't start for him until he perceives it, until he perceives the affordance of defending it or countering it, or whatever that affordance is. It doesn't exist, and I like that. I mean, I think that's a really good answer.
Guys, that's the best answer. That's the answer.
It's one of the best answers.
It's actually the answer I'm looking for. But I do have a follow up. That's the perception. Go ahead.
So Forrest, we are trying to figure out if perception and action are coupled, then they're really the same thing. And so when you perceive that punch coming at you, your action is coupled with that. There is no thinking or changing or doing. It's just happening.
Yeah.
It's a great answer.
And then I will defer to you guys as to whether, for me, I have counters that I've done a lot. So one of these counters hopefully is going to pop out, and hopefully it's going to be the right one. So like it's a cross, I see it, I immediately slip outside. And if I'm really good, if I'm really feeling myself that day, I slip outside and throw my own cross, come back with a left hook, move off.
Stable movement solutions.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned stabilizing earlier. You can explain that one to me offline.
Gotcha. So we would from a dynamical systems thing, right? We would call these the fact over time you're going to see a lot. You're going to start to perceive rear crosses coming. You're going to start coupling your slipping actions to that, and that becomes an attractive solution. So when you see that in the chaos of a fight, you're attracted towards that solution. We're not saying there's a little Forrest in the head going, oh, that's what I do now here. I'll pull from my Rolodex of techniques and I'll go over there. So I think we're on the same page. The reason I asked that question, when does the strike start? And I thought, again, I'm not just gassing you up here. That is the answer I want.
Mm-hmm.
I would follow up and that says that's where the value of the liveness comes from. Because the more rear crosses or kicks or strikes that come at us, we will be able to perceive that earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. That is our perceptual resolution gets higher. And if perception and action are the same things, that is where skill lives. And that's the reason, I guess, we're kind of against dead drilling. Certainly pad work and pad work cannot offer you that. So pad work may have a value, but it has to be a different value. It's not the same. It's just not the same. It can't be the same. There's no case to be made that it's the same.
Yeah, the pad holder literally moves his hand because I've thrown a shitty punch. This shit wouldn't connect, but he literally moves it so to make me feel good. But all right, aliveness versus aliveness, and a big part for me of aliveness is game speed. Aliveness versus risk versus damage. So that's if you wanted to say what is the problem, what is the biggest problem, with training MMA, I would say it's adding the aliveness and the game speed, the freedom of movement, right? The openness of the sport, if you will. That's how I describe it. Like I call it a very open sport because there's so many options, more than any other sport. So that's freedom of movement, right? Versus the amount of damage you can take over here. So how do I get maximal aliveness with damage? Now, the other thing, the thing I'll throw down against you guys, and I'm not sure if it's a criticism or what, but aliveness at a speed that is not game speed, I feel, sets you up for failure. Because if I'm alive down here, but I go to a competition and the guy's alive at this speed, it's whoa, shit. And that's something I struggle with because I'm slow. It's weird. I'm not weird. I'm just like, I'm not an amazing athlete when it comes to reaction time. I'm very good at some things. I'm actually relatively quick for my size, but I don't have the ability, and this is why I didn't make it in college football. I don't have the ability to see what you're doing, react to it in a second, move off. And I think that's the skill that you want to get in sparring, your ability to react or impose your will on somebody that doesn't want you to, plus do that under fatigue with some level of exhaustion. And that's the value of sparring and aliveness, right? So I guess that's,
I love what you said here about because I've got a guy right now, Mitch, right? So I think speed, fastness comes probably from the weight room and your intrinsic dynamics, muscle fibers, blah, 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 right?
Or your parents.
You mentioned
parents.
Yep. You mentioned quickness here, and I love that you brought that up. I think you're probably quick because of your perceptual attunement, right?
Yeah.
Quickness for me is able to get off quicker, able to start earlier.
Yeah.
This is what comes through the perception action loop and becoming perceptually attuned. So I have a guy, Mitch, who's not fast. He's not a fast guy, but he's quick. Now, when you can get someone who's naturally fast and get that quickness in them, that's when you see some of that elite movement.
Yeah, well, some of the studies on athletes is more experienced athletes start their adjustments or reactions slower.
Oh, or later.
Later, not slower. Slower is a bad word. Later. So the more experienced or higher level shortstop is in baseball, when the ball is hit, they will actually start their movement to the ball later than a less experienced guy. But to be able to start later, you have to be a better athlete. You have to be able to close that distance also. So it's all one system.
Yeah.
But it's
I gotta
interesting.
remember that. That's interesting. Yeah, that I would not have guessed.
No, I don't think a lot of people would have, but
I would because I feel like, I don't know. I feel
like the best soccer goalkeepers start to dive later.
Right, because if they go earlier, they have there's more chance to be faked out or make a mistake.
Less information. They've just got less information to make the decision on. The longer you can wait, the more information you have on where he is, where his foot is, where he's positioned his body. All that stuff's going to come instinctually, and then you move. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's cool.
The longer I wait for your cross, I can tell if it's here or if it's straight. But again, I don't have that affordance personally. Because I would just get hit right in the face if I just try to figure it out. Like I've got to go, oh shit,
Right. A lot of my best head movement comes after you've punched me.
Yeah.
Then I'm like,
it's like when we would spar with the Atlanta guys, and I was like, I caught the second of a double jab. I was trying to catch the first. It had already hit me, but I caught the second one.
Should have double legged him.
I should have just knocked out the ring with those dudes. But you get what I'm saying, though. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I like that. I never really thought about that. I didn't know, but I can see why. And then the other thing I guess that I will give you is the purpose of all this training. What's the purpose of all this? For me, it's for me, because I have specific UFC fights. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make you better in a UFC fight. That's my sole goal in this. I want you to be able to find your rhythm or flow or whatever the fuck it is as fast as possible. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm kind of looking for. How do I get you into where you're the rhythm, where you've done so much that you see the guy's shoulder dip and you know that this is what's coming. You see the guy's shoulder dip and you know that's a feint. He's not doing shit.
Look, when you have some time later this week, look into the idea of calibration.
Calibration, okay.
Yeah, because I think you'll find it exactly what you're talking about. That human beings, especially high-level athletes, they learn so well that they have to recalibrate all the time to what they're seeing. And so you want them to get into the cage and very quickly recalibrate to what they're seeing.
So I know what this term is because you've told me this before.
I think you'll find it interesting if you, because I think it's what you're saying.
That's exactly it. And then you're going to recalibrate so fast that it's almost not a conscious thought.
And you have to keep calibrating as you get fatigued or they get fatigued, or it's a constant process.
Because their speed changes, their distance will change. They're all of a sudden they're throwing a punch from too close because they are fatigued. They've made bad cognitive choices. So your defensive solutions have changed. Yeah, no, I mean I definitely get
chaos.
What you say. I'll say. What was that?
I just said it's fucking chaos, especially at the levels our fighters are at.
Yeah.
That would be my only pushback on your point about game speed. I don't disagree, right? A fight camp, that's what I'm trying to do with my fighters, is calibrate them to game speed, just, to peak towards a fight.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's unclear to me, so I'm not making a statement here, that it's unclear to me whether we need to have game speed generally while we're developing and we're just, picking up on developing our perception action capabilities. It's unclear to me if we really need the game speed there, because I think what we do is just recalibrate it closer to the fight. Because as Adam says, we can calibrate up and down. Our body is incredibly adaptable, but that's not always for good or for ill, right?
So I can't show you this because the camera. Oh wait, where? Oh. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So what I've got, you remember the introduce and isolation, integrate, right? So for me, you're identifying the technique. You're starting slow and you're moving on a continuum to going faster. Does that make sense? So I start the technique. My partner's going to go relatively slow, and then we're going to try to speed that up. There we go. And then we're going to try to speed that up as we go to where we gradually get into what is a game speed. And I'm pretty sure what you were saying about recalibration. Because now I'm having he's going faster and faster. And then hopefully I can just, okay, this is what it looks like full speed now that I've mastered this technique, right? And so for me, in this sense, technique, I'm simply talking about catching the jab, frame off, catch the jab, frame off, catch the jab. He's going faster. Oh, shit. Now he's fainting. He's double jabbing. Shit. Okay. Now he's real close to me and I can't frame. I've got a shield. How am I making these decisions quickly? Hopefully for me anyway. And I know this about myself. I was saying, like, I need to kind of see it and then we'll kind of ease into it and then we keep going and going. And this is something I saw out of when Magomedov, who's the 170-pound champion now? What's his name?
Islam
Makhachev. The guys had so much skill that they were able to go with a very high flow roll. But it was because they were so skilled. They're doing these live wrestling, but without hurting each other. Where we get our guys in Mexico that they haven't done a ton of live wrestling. They didn't grow up doing wrestling. They live wrestle, they fucking kill each other. You know what I'm saying? So these guys are each so skilled that they can like pull back and almost prevent themselves and their partners from getting hurt to some extent. And then that's what I saw, is that group was very skilled at, kind of adapting their wrestling to whatever day it was. Or, like for me, it was always Mike Whitehead. If you go in, you say, Mike, I'm having a shit day, take it easy on me, give you a nice technical work. You say, Mike, fucking feel great, let's go. He could match you with that. And that's why he was a better sparring partner than he ever was fighters, because he would kind of match his opponent's pace. If his opponent came out and sucked, he would fight with them in a fashion that almost kind of sucked. But if his opponent came out was really good, I'm not saying he could beat anybody, but he could hang with most people in a real fight because he had the ability to turn it up. What he didn't always do is turn it up when his opponent was down here. So that's just another kind of weird dynamic thing that can happen,
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh,
you got to go.
The last thing for me that I have trouble. And again, I run one, maybe two practices a week, so it's hard. But guys want to see fucking techniques. They just want to see. They want to learn the move. I can't break them of learning the move. I posted the thing about Drysdale the other day with the kids, and basically they'll find it. I know that you'll find it, but they want me to tell them, is my head in the right place? Are my hands in the right place? They just want that feedback. I tried to not give it to the kids in China, and they hated it. They needed to be told what to do. Yeah, and then when I told them what to do, they didn't all do it. They kind of also did their own thing, but they just needed me to tell them. I think
that's cultural.
It could be cultural too. They also needed to know that I had my solution. This is what you do. This will work. Yeah. I don't know. It was weird.
It's easier if you started with people that had never been spoon-fed, did not know there was another way.
They didn't think that, paying $100 for a Gary Tunin seminar was going to change their lives.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta go to work now.
So do I. Fantastic. Hey, that was great. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. I learned a lot, and I'll come back and we'll talk about stabilization.
All right. Love you, brother.
All right. Love you guys. Thank you, Scott. Great to meet you, brother.
Thanks. Bye.